Welcome everyone and happy holidays to you. Thank you for joining us tonight for our last in our food film series for 2021 on Kiss the Ground. My name is Sarah Webb. I'm the Community Engagement Librarian with the library. And I also want to introduce our moderators for tonight. Sherry Chin is with SOUP and Lee Tevens with the School of Innovation. So they've been leading our discussions for these past few films, and they'll be doing that as well as Steve Schlother. He is our resident tech guy, so he'll be, well, he was, sorry, he usually is. Sherry will be showing the film clips tonight. So just to go over the format for tonight's discussion, we'll have a set of 4 clips. After each clip, we'll have a bit of discussion with some questions and also a set of poll questions as well to get you thinking about the topics that are in this film. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Lee.
Hi. Okay, so we're going to start with our first clip. So the narrator states that pesticides were invented as a result of war, originally used to kill plants and people. How many of us were aware of this? Is anybody? I'll admit I wasn't. Yeah, part of me is not surprised, but that was an eye-opener for me. I had never learned that in school.
I didn't learn it in school, but just learned it as, being immersed. We're talking here about whether, when, what do I say, where these conversations go on, but being involved in the small organic farming community, you learn that.
Yeah, so, I don't know. Even before learning this, did pesticide or does pesticide use affect any of your buying decisions? Or do you pay extra to buy organic?
Yeah.
I'm kind of mixed on it. I do kind of try to pay attention to the dirty 15 or whatever they are.
Oh, yes.
To put a premium on getting organic for those kind of things. Right. And of course, to buy from farm stands and to grow what we can, even though we don't grow very much, but at least something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mostly try to avoid foods that are grown with pesticides, including grains, which is like a lot of things.
Laurel, do you say greens or grains?
Grains like corn and wheat and soybeans.
Oh, right.
Okay.
That are produced this way. I try to avoid those.
Yeah. Okay. And well, another question we had was, are you aware of alternatives to pesticide use? And I assume that this group is aware of many alternatives to pesticide use, but
I gotta say though, that's hard.
It is.
That's hard. We're battling aphids in the greenhouse right now.
Oh, tell me about it. We're growing things in the greenhouse. The kohlrabi is infested. It's amazing.
And I picked up some stuff at Gardening Haven in Dayton, and we've been treating, but I just did something the other day. It was a chemical called spinosad, and that they recommended, and I thought it was okay for organic use. and I sprayed everything and I thought, this really smells chemically.
Oh,
And then I went and read it again. I went, I'm not seeing organic anywhere here.
yeah.
And it's, oh my gosh, you just have to be so careful. But I also have to say that we haven't beat the aphids yet in
Yeah.
the stuff that we're doing.
Yeah. I thought growing in the greenhouse would be, you know, would be better for the plants. But it's not. It's not. We just put some beets out today, so I hope they do okay.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay, well, maybe we could try the polling questions.
Sure. Let me launch this for you guys. I try to buy organic, pesticide-free produce when possible. And most of you, I strongly agree. Excellent. Sorry, let me get this other poll up here. Oh, here. Okay, question number 2. When I garden, I try to use alternative pesticides. All of you strongly agree. Yeah, we do our best to try some new things.
I do a lot of rotating, like if there's a problem that comes up, it changes from year to year, but then I won't grow that thing in that place, to try to get away from that's one of the ways I manage with them. Rotation.
I want to tag on a little bit to the conversation about aphids. And I think this goes for all pests, but they talk about the health, the quality of the soil and how much that impacts the health of the plants. And in the greenhouse, we reuse soil. So we're reusing depleted soil, and we try to mix in some new soil, which we've had to pay for. And it's really interesting that we have some pots where they're just inundated. I mean, the aphids just took over in that pot and the plants are dead. I mean, nothing that we did really made a difference. And then we have other pots that are hardly touched. And I think some of it is plant variety, but I also am pretty sure that some of it is where the soil is healthier and therefore the plants are healthier. That's been a really interesting observation to make. I'm really learning from watching that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
We have one more question before our next clip, and that is pesticide use is detrimental to the soil.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of you agree, for sure. All right. Okay, we have our next clip.
Okay, and this is on regenerative agriculture, and it starts at exactly 37 minutes and it goes to 39 minutes. This is, of course, in San Diego, but what struck you about this example of regenerative agriculture? And do you think it could be replicated elsewhere, like Springfield?
I think it weaves in some with what Laurel said, which is you know, she spoke about was more rotation, but what we're doing with the soil in both instances is diversity.
Yes. Yeah, and you know, as a biology teacher, I teach this all the time. You know, it's so, when we look at graphs of, you know, predator and prey and ecosystem collapse, and most of the time it's because of the lack of biodiversity, you know? So this is, I mean, biodiversity is just fundamental to any functioning system. Yeah.
And I think what we're learning too, like when you said, can we do this in Springfield? And we just got an example. The example that we just saw is was perennials.
Mhm.
But when you garden, you're gardening with annuals. And that changes things up a little bit. You know, and I'm always saying that because I'm having to rethink through, you know, how to, after learning how to do some no-till stuff, I'm having to rethink, how do I do this? You know, how do we rotate? And when we do rotate, how do we do that without rototilling? It's not hard, but it just makes you change up how you're doing things.
Right.
I have an interesting mix on, we have 1 acre and we have a lot of perennial like berries, elderberries, black raspberries, blackberries, currants, red raspberries, apples, pears, cherries, pawpaws. And just over time, we just keep planting. We have hazelnuts. So we have a lot of food forest here, plus some gardens and plus some kitchen gardens, we call them, that are like raised beds. So they never get tilled. But they get rotated, but not tilled. But the big garden, you know, with the sun, then we'll till that one piece. So we have kind of a mix of several things.
I think what's hard with the trying not to till is anytime you need a seed bed. You know, if you're planting seed, there are just certain, you know, certain requirements of those seeds. I find that is the hard part. I think everything else is pretty easy.
Yeah, to try to avoid tilling, it's easier to transplant plants.
Yeah, yeah. And we do, you know, and that's certainly easier. But I mean, there are just some things like, you know, carrots you don't transplant. You know, it's just, there's something you just kind of have to go, I got to figure this out a different way. So
I think it's kind of sad too. Like I grew up, I came up with in the 70s environmental science, and I worked a little with the Soil Conservation Service, and no-till was a big experimental thing. They were trying not to till in agriculture, but they were using a lot of herbicides instead of tilling. And I find that very, very sad. You know, just the trade-off. But and the idea was to save the soil erosion.
yeah, certainly no-till. I think no-till is a really different concept in conventional agriculture than it is in the garden.
Yeah.
And you know, something that has kind of came to, as I was watching this, and I was understanding the amount of diversity that he was talking about, I thought, you know, what's really interesting is that our food, so that means that you're doing a lot, like you're talking about with your garden, Laurel, you have a lot of different things, but not a lot of any one thing.
Right, and something's going to do well depending on the weather and the insects. It changes all the time. So something's going to do well and something's going to do poorly. And maybe we won't get any. Like if you don't get any apples, you don't have apples for another year or two. And that's an interesting thing to get used to. It's like, oh, we might not have apples, but we're going to have cherries.
Yeah. And just learning how to adapt to that. And the other thing that comes to my mind as we hear that about the diversity of things, but not large quantities, is that anytime that you're functioning in a local food system, you, at least people who are talking about doing it for a living, they get really pressed hard toward producing large amounts of certain things so that they can sell to restaurants or hospitals or schools.
Mm-hmm.
And that flies in the face of farming for diversity.
That's true.
And
like we on a year that we had bad squash bugs, I won't plant squash the next year. I want those bugs to die off. But I might plant sweet potatoes, so I'll have an alternative carbohydrate that's, but I won't have squash. So it's kind of interesting because the world that's purchasing food doesn't want to give up that thing. But when you're really growing it without pesticides, then you do cycle. Like we're not going to have that for a year or two.
Yeah, good point. That's a great point.
And then if I have diversity, like if I have some early apples and some potatoes, I'm thinking about when you have what carbohydrates throughout the year. It gets really interesting. So then you want Lodi apples because they ripen in July, because you're starting to run out of food then. And those become really important variety.
Oh, cool.
Interesting. All right, we've got another set of poll questions. Healing the soil will help heal the climate. Yes, all of you agree. Healing the soil will help heal the climate.
I will say that the film sometimes verged on saying like, this is the only thing you need to do to heal the climate, which bothered me because, there is no silver bullet. I mean, this is an important step, but there's other things that have to be done to address the climate crisis.
Mm.
I totally agree with that.
Next question. Regenerative agriculture is a means of working with the cycles of plants and climate. Yeah, all of you agree with that. Okay, one last one before our next clip. Regenerative agriculture is possible in our own backyards. Yes, absolutely. As we saw with that last clip, it's definitely possible. So, all right.
Easier if you own your home.
Yes.
Thinking of renters. Yeah.
Well, I think in some ways it's easier for the homeowner than it is for the professional farmer because you don't have that pressure to sell to hospitals and restaurants and so forth that Sherry mentioned. You're just you're just doing for yourself, so you can do whatever you want.
What's hard, I think, for a homeowner is not having enough labor. Like it takes several people. It's hard especially if you have full-time jobs to pay for the home.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's like, oh, we need more people.
Well, and I can tell you from working on a medium-sized produce farm in the summer
Mhm.
that there's not very many people that want to do this kind of work,
No.
whether it's in their backyard and especially when it's out, you know, doing it all day for somebody else or not big money. You have to love what you're doing. So you
But aren't the migrants doing that work, taking jobs away from Americans?
Thank you, Steve. Right. Taking away all those jobs that we don't want to do. Right.
Right.
But we're still mad about it. Oh, Lee, what's the next one?
Oh, the next one is on US government subsidies, and it starts at 55 minutes, 52 seconds. What struck you about Gabe Brown's farm and his turning away from subsidies?
It struck me that his profit margin was a lot higher.
Yeah.
It just struck me that he's such an outlier in agriculture today that most people can't imagine the agriculture system without the commodity price supports.
Yeah.
Diversity struck me. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
I can kind of imagine it because I'm old enough to remember there were more diverse farms. Like I remember farms getting bigger and bigger and bigger and small farms getting fewer and fewer.
Mhm.
So I think it helps to have seen that in my lifetime, and it certainly started before my lifetime. But I remember when pigs were always out in the pasture, for instance.
Yeah.
I think it was in the 80s, I think, when there was just a huge crash
Mhm.
of family farms, if I remember right.
Yeah, I remember it.
And
There would be families with maybe 8 to 12 or 14 dairy cattle.
mhm.
Mm.
About 10 or between 10 and 15 years ago, I was working in rehab. And I remember when I would work with people and just, with elderly people and talk to them about, what they did and where they grew up. And so many of them would say something about living on a farm. And I would say, what did you grow? And I could not believe how many times people said, everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're
And
right.
And I used to try to guess, like, just all the little fields. I would say, oh, that's wheat, that's barley, that's oats. I never see barley or oats in Ohio anymore, but it used to be, it was fun to just see all the different things in the fields.
Steve had to leave.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to mention, because there was conversation there about the subsidies. I am on the Ohio Ecological Food and Farm Association's policy steering committee, and the conversations for input for the next farm bill are coming up. And they are planning to hold some listening sessions. And there will be one, I think the closest one to us is going to be in the Yellow Springs area. And I believe they're going to be in March. But I'll put in the chat the address, the web address for OFA. And I will also, I would encourage people to, their annual conference is coming up in February, and it's always just outstanding for all of this kind of information. And I will also put in Amelie Lipstrew is the person who is the head of OFA policy. And I'll put her email address in the chat as well. If you have an interest in going to a listening session and voicing, you know, how you feel about the upcoming Farm Bill, because remember, the Farm Bill isn't just about farms, it is about our food and about our food systems. And I think we're all coming to a place where we need to have our voices heard. You know, I know a big question I am asking is, why are we not subsidizing the organic production the way we're subsidizing conventional agriculture? Or just, you know, don't subsidize anybody, but you know, the scales are tipped really heavily in one direction, or in one direction right now. So, and we have, believe you me, we have to fight to keep organic, sustainable, regenerative practices in front of the USDA and in front of our lawmakers. Put some cards.
I'll go ahead and put up the next questions.
Okay.
A diversity of plants contributes to soil health. Yes. It does. Excellent. Taxpayers are aware of U.S. agriculture subsidies that contribute to soil degradation. Definitely not aware. For sure.
I'm going to guess most people think that's a good thing. I think we're supporting
cheaper food.
Okay, last poll before our next clip, which will be our last clip for the evening. Farmers such as Mr. Brown illustrate that regenerative agriculture can be profitable. For sure. Absolutely.
So our last clip is a very large scale success of regenerative agriculture. And it's the Los Plateau in China. And it starts at 1 minute 12, I'm sorry, 1 hour, 12 minutes, 20 seconds. The films we've been watching are pretty typical of this. You know, you see all the damage we've done, and then, you know, they end up with, you know, hopeful examples. But this is a huge, long-term, large-scale project, and it's, I don't know.
But so
Inspiring.
hopeful, so
Yeah.
hopeful, and the tie to economic stability is amazing.
Yeah, and also social, you know, social progress too, you know, more schooling and so the health of the soil lends itself to, you know, health in other areas of our lives.
Yeah, it's literally brought life to that whole community in every way. That is astonishing.
And of course, they did not either did not measure or did not share what kind of a climatic, benefit
what if,
was added.
yeah, did the temperature decrease over time? Yeah, how did it fluctuate as a result of, increased plant, life there? Yeah, that would be interesting to see. I wondered about that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. I'll go ahead and put up the last poll questions.
Okay.
Severely eroded areas can be successfully remediated and regenerated. Yes, for sure. That is a tremendous example of that.
I think certainly not to the same degree. Like what we have here, we're so lucky right here where the glaciers brought down such beautiful soil, and I mean it's unique on the earth.
For sure.
And you can't get that back to that degree, but I think you can really make a difference.
I think we need these. You heard that guy say, I knew I had to spend the rest of my life doing this.
Mhm.
And I think the other thing that happens to us is we go, oh, I can't make enough of a difference, so I'm not going to try. And I think that's why it's important to keep these stories of hope in front of our faces, so that we remember that the drops that we put into the bucket make a difference.
I wonder what it looks like now, today, because that was back in 2009.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to maybe just look that up. I'm sure there's images somewhere on the internet of that. That would be interesting.
Mhm.
Sure. Absolutely.
The Los Plateau is an example of a large-scale regenerative agriculture success. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It's very amazing. Okay, one last question. When the soil becomes healthy, people prosper as well. Yes, for sure. Absolutely. Well, that is all the questions we have for tonight. Lee, did you want to open it up to more discussion?
No, I'd just like to thank you for joining us, and thank you for hosting us, Sarah.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And we have recorded the program tonight, so you will be able to view this program as well as our former Food Fields programs on the library's YouTube channel. So if you go to the library's website at ccplohio.org and go to our online programs, you'll be able to find the rest in our food film series. So, but this is the last one for 2021. And let's see. Oh, I also have a survey that I will be sending you after the program is done. So if you will fill that out, it's just a really super quick survey that will help us kind of plan for future programming.
Thanks for doing that, Sarah, because I know that we keep saying these conversations are so incredibly important, and people are so busy, and they don't understand how important this is. And so we're, we're starting to look over this whole thing and go, how do we change this up so that we reach more people and, what kind of venues are the best ones to use and all that kind of stuff. So we'll just keep plugging away at it, and the survey will probably help that.
I hope so. I hope so. Well, thank you, Sherry and Lee, for moderating for tonight.
Well, thanks, Sarah. And thanks for
Thank you.
coming, Laurel. Oh, good to
And
see.
I
I saw
was,
Sherry's name on there. Like, wow.
Oh, yeah, we don't see each other very often
This
at
is
all.
so important. The subject is so important.
Absolutely. Well,
And it is discouraging. I mean, you know, it's discouraging that more people aren't more interested. Or maybe they're interested, but I don't know.
absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
but I'm always an optimist.
Same here. And Springfield is our own little Los Plateau. So
Mhm.
in different ways, you know. So,
That's right. That's right.
so we just keep chipping away.
Yes.
Well, thank you all again.
Oh, thank you.
And happy holidays. to
Yeah.
you.
You
Same-
too.
Yeah, to you too. Happy holidays,
care.
everybody.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right.
Take care.